Hello. I'd like to thank you for participating in the new Idaho League online concussion protocol training. This training is required by Idaho law for all participants in our program. And here in the Idaho League, we have a great partner with St. Luke's to help us educate everyone involved in our program on the importance of concussion identification and management. I'm here today with Corey Bell of the St. Luke's Concussion Clinic, who provides community education throughout the state for organizations such as ours. Corey, thanks for being here today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So based on data that we received from the NICA safety study, the prevention of concussions, the treatment of concussions, and conservative athlete return to play after concussions are of the utmost importance to the whole NICA community. And that's why we have these trainings here today with Corey, and so I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take it from here, Corey.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Eddie. Okay, so we will start today's training with what is a concussion? Well, a concussion is defined as a type of traumatic brain injury caused by a bump, blow, or jolt to the head that changes the way your brain normally works. Concussions can also occur from a fall or blow to the body that causes the head to deflect and the brain to move quickly back and forth inside the skull. So, very important to note here that you do not actually have to hit your head to have suffered a concussion. When we look at injuries, we tend to break them into two categories, functional and structural injuries. If you take a look at both these pictures, what we notice immediately is that a structural injury is very easy for us to see. So we see the athlete on crutches. We can see that he has a wrap on his left ankle. If we were to look at an x-ray or an MRI of that structural injury, we may see bone or ligament damage if it is there. If you compare that to the student walking down the hallway in the yellow and gray sweatshirt, let's say he has a concussion. If we look at him, physically nothing looks different, and if we were to pull up an MRI or a CT scan, nothing would show up. So concussions do not show on medical imaging. Even more of a reason it's important we learn some of the signs and symptoms to look for. So concussion signs and symptoms, I use my friend Arnold Schwarzenegger as a way to remind me of PECS, which stands for physical, emotional, cognitive, and sleep. So the physical symptoms, headache, pressure in the head, neck pain, nausea, vomiting, balance problems, dizziness, visual problems or blurred vision, fatigue, just not feeling right, sensitivity to light or noise. Emotional symptoms, so being more irritable, sad, more nervous, more emotional or anxious. Cognitive, so just feeling like you're slowed down or in a fog, having a hard time concentrating or a difficult time remembering. With sleep, people can be more drowsy, sleep much more or much less than they normally do, and also have a hard time falling asleep. Two big things to remember with concussions is, first of all, they're different for everybody. So the signs and symptoms can be different for everybody, and so can that recovery time. Also important to note is that with youth athletes, it does take on average about 3 to 4 weeks to fully heal up and recover from a concussion. Remember, that's an average, so some athletes may heal quicker, and it's very normal for an athlete to take a little bit longer than that. All right, so some potential consequences of concussion. A big one is second impact syndrome. So it's an extremely rare condition. What happens is somebody actually has a concussion, tries to return to play too soon or before that injury is completely resolved. A second blow or impact occurs. It doesn't have to be a big hit, but it can actually cause the brain to lose its ability to regulate blood flow, which results in rapid swelling. So it's actually fatal 50% of the time. Individuals who survive are severely disabled with profound physical and cognitive deficits. So to kind of put your mind at ease, I'll also let you know this is extremely rare. There's about 2 cases of this in the United States every year, with a population of about 326 million people here in the U.S., and makes that a pretty rare statistic. The reason we talk about it is, first of all, we don't know why this happens to some people and why it doesn't happen to others. So a really important reason that we pull athletes that we think may have a concussion. And secondly, if you look at Zachary Lysted, he suffered second impact syndrome back in 2009 in the state of Washington. And in response to his injury, Washington actually was the first state to create state concussion laws. And now all 50 states have followed suit. So we have laws in place that basically are there to keep your athletes safer. All right, so concussion management. So for a long time, we've probably all heard that maybe you shouldn't sleep after having a concussion. That is no longer true. Really what we recommend now is an initial period of 24 to 48 hours of both relative physical and cognitive rest. before they start the return to sport process. So for young athletes, the hardest part about that is that cognitive rest during the day, so staying off their phones, computers, video games, TVs, some of those devices that do not allow their brain to really get good rest. The good news is we're actually going to start cognitive activity as tolerated using a gradual stepwise approach prior to the complete resolution of symptoms. So this means we're going to allow them to get back onto some of those devices in 5 to 15 minute periods of time at first, and as they start tolerating those devices, we'll start to increase that time frame. So this is a return to learn protocol. Idaho is actually very unique in that we're one of the few states that has return to learn as a part of our state legislation. Basically what we talked about earlier, we want to get that really good day or two of rest, then we want to start hopping back on our devices 5 to 15 minute periods of time at first. Next, we're going to do homework at home. Once we start to be able to tolerate some homework in an extended period of time, we recommend athletes start going back to school part-time. Important to note that athletes will probably still have symptoms when they go back to school part-time, but there should be certain accommodations in place to help them return to school at a rate that doesn't overwork their brain. Lastly, athletes need to return to school full-time, which is very important because in Idaho, it's actually state law that an athlete needs to be fully back into school without accommodations before they can return to their sport full-time. This is just an example of a return to sport strategy. What's really important is that each step happens and there needs to be 24 hours in between each step. So no symptoms can show up, new symptoms in those 24-hour periods. All right, so some prevention and resources. So first of all, the St. Luke's Concussion Clinic has a website. If you go to www.stlukesonline.org/concussion, great resource. Most of our information comes from the CDC, so great resource for you. Next is the Idaho Interscholastic Cycling League Concussion Protocol page. This is right on the website. Has just about everything you could ever need, starting with a free and optional training course you can take. This course you're watching right now. Parent and Athlete Concussion Fact Sheet, our Parent and Student Education Idaho League Acknowledgement Form, and also a Return to Play Medical Release Form. Alrighty, so what does Idaho Interscholastic Cycling League Concussion Protocol actually look like? Well, it starts with a mandatory parent-athlete education. That's what we're doing right now. Next, there's a parent-athlete consent form. Second, there's an optional resource of baseline testing. If this is something that you really feel like you'd like to do, then baseline testing is made available in certain parts of our state. Third, concussion training for coaches and athletic trainers. So all the coaches that are a part of NICA and a part of Idaho Interscholastic Cycling League receive concussion training and they know what to look for with your athletes. Fourth, there's a removal from play protocol and also a medical release form that needs to be signed by the appropriate healthcare professional before that athlete can return to play. Next, like we talked about earlier, Idaho has a return to learn protocol as a part of their state legislation, so we've implemented that as a part of Idaho Interscholastic Cycling League's protocol. And lastly, a return to play protocol as well. All right, so the consent form, this can be found on the website. This is basically what needs to be signed before an athlete is allowed to begin participation. So it says that parents and athletes have received some education, they understand that there's some risks associated with participating, and they believe it's still great for their athlete to participate, and they're going to sign and let their athlete play anyways. This is a medical release. So if at any point in time an athlete is suspected of having a concussion, this will be handed to that athlete. It's also made available on the website. This needs to be signed and then scanned and returned to the league director, Eddie Fryer, before that athlete is going to be cleared to return to play. Alrighty, and I'll turn it back over to Eddie to finish things up.
Great, thanks Corey, good information. So NICA has developed some guidelines specific to the use of mountain bike helmets in our sport. First and foremost, we recommend that you replace the helmet every 3 years. A lot of people don't know that the efficacy of helmets actually deteriorates over time, and so 3 years is a good rule of thumb to replace that helmet. You should also replace the helmet after any crash that is involving that helmet, or if you see any visible damage or deterioration on that helmet. More information about guidelines for helmet use can be found at www.smf.org. So now that you've taken this training, what are some of the next steps that you need to think about? First and foremost, we would like for you to contact your team director and inquire about that team's parent acknowledgement form process. Some teams will do that in person. Other teams will use this new online format. And then if you have any additional questions, you can reach out to either Corey Bell here at St. Luke's or myself. Contact information is there on the screen in front of you. We just want to thank you for taking the time to participate in this training today.
Thank you.